What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday, and today we are going to be comparing with the versus the SOC Voltron versus the ThreeZero Voltron. This was actually decided upon by the Patreon supporters. I put it up to them for a vote if they wanted to do it, because if they vote for it to be a video, then they actually lose a Sit Down Saturday on Patreon, so I left it up to them. But they voted to have it, and here we are. And I'll put something up over there too anyway. But I first, I'll be honest with you, at first I was kind of like, man, I don't feel like doing this. But I was like, well, there is a couple things that I can get out of this. Because for one, I missed the elbow articulation on the Soul of Chogokin one when I originally reviewed it, so I can kind of have my little moment of grace and make up for it. And for two, I don't think I've ever really done a Voltron versus for sure. I'm not even sure if I've done a combiner versus. I can't remember. But I thought it might be something different and unique, so here we are. And outside of that, I think we can just go ahead and get started, and you know where we start, with accessories. As for accessories, they both come with the shoulder-mounted weapons, plus the weapon for their mouth, so to speak. They both come with the big blazing sword, as well as the shield. The ThreeZero comes with the rolling cutter, which is the saw blade that attaches to the bottom of the feet, or should I say feet, of the lions, the leg lions specifically. But the Soul of Chogokin comes with the kind of two swords that can become like a spear, as well as the base stand to house all of the weapons, but then also provides a stand for the figure itself, which makes me give the accessory point to Soul of Chogokin. As for gimmicks, I don't really feel like either of them have any. They both combined, I mean, that's kind of a gimmick. They all have the kind of flip-up weapon things on the back of the cats. So I'll tie them out for gimmicks. So this one is actually a little bit tricky, but we're gonna move on to build and materials. So the joint connections are a lot more tighter and secure on the ThreeZero than they are on the Soul of Chogokin. But ThreeZero has some joints that are far too tight, whereas all of the joints on the Soul of Chogokin are smooth and effortless. So I'm gonna tie them out for build. I'm giving the materials to Soul of Chogokin because the plastics feel great on both, but the added die cast does give a nice weight and feel to the Bandai one. So I'm giving them materials, tying them out in build, and that can bring us to hardware. And the Bandai one, the SSE, it just has so much more ratchets in it, like nice click ratchets, hard ratchets that work extremely well. It just does a better job in that way. And that should take us into sculpt and paint. So we'll look at the front view. I'm gonna tie them out. I think they're both good. I like the proportions better on the Bandai, like the smaller upper body in comparison to the lower body. But I love the head sculpt so much better on the ThreeZero than I do on the Bandai. So I just can't in good faith deny that. There's also like the cleanup panels and stuff that the ThreeZero does that the Bandai doesn't, that does add something. So while I like the overall proportions better on the Bandai, I like a lot of the aesthetic cues better on the ThreeZero. So I'm tying them out. As for the head sculpts, I think, like I said, the ThreeZero just blows it out of the water. It's better proportioned. The face covers the whole entire head area, whereas the Bandai one has a little face kind of tucked up in there. It was never as good. I always had issues with the Bandai face, and it remains the case. The ThreeZero one is a much smarter, much better approach to it. Now, deco-wise, we're splitting hairs. The gold is chrome on the Bandai. It's painted on the ThreeZero, but for the most part, they all have the same paint application, just different ways of achieving it, or different methods, or different mediums of paint. Side view, same thing. The face, it's too little, man. It was always an issue. It's an issue from the front, it's an issue from the side. It's just the same throughout. And there's nothing really else to kind of complain about. Deco is great on both. The ThreeZero just does the face better. Now, obviously, the arms are different. The green one is slightly different than the red one, but I think we can just look at one and get a general opinion on the matter. And I think the ThreeZero does it better. They have that little extra engineering of those panels that come around and cover down. It just makes it a little bit more interesting, whereas the Bandai one is sort of just your kind of paint by numbers Voltron approach where you just tuck the arms up. And I think as a result, the ThreeZero one does look better. Paint wise, tie game, one goes chrome, one goes paint, but they both gave it the business. Now, from the side, I think it's a tie game. The ThreeZero is bulkier in the forearm, but I don't think that that's necessarily a plus over the other. The other has like the kind of black square more. That adds a little bit of breakup there. I don't think there's like, I think we're splitting hairs, really. I think that it's tie game. Now, the chest torso area, I think, is where the Bandai kind of shines. I like the way that the red crest sits better and sort of more purposefully, more stated, whereas like the tapering off of the ThreeZero is not my favorite just design-wise. And I think that the extra abdomen area on the ThreeZero is a little kind of odd as well, just for the character. So I'm gonna give the chest and torso area to the Bandai. From the side, I like that the bump out on the chest is a bit more pronounced as well on the Bandai. Otherwise, I think it's a wash. I think we're kind of splitting hairs, but I think it makes him look beefier, so to speak. And I think I'm gonna give the chest torso area to the Bandai. Looking at the pelvises, it's kind of a wash. I like the red better on the Bandai, but I like the black background on the gold star better on the ThreeZero, so I'm going to tie them out from the frontal view. Looking at it from the side, I mean, it's a tie, right? What are we talking about? It's the differences are so marginal. Looking at the legs, I mean, I don't think that there's a standout here. I think it's a tie. There's things I like about both, but I mean, once again, it's like, it's so close, but they're both so close to one another. From the side, the panels, once again, they just add something. They give it a little sauce. It's something different. It's something clever about it, you know? And I think that that needs to be acknowledged. So from the side, I'm going to give it to the ThreeZero. From the back, I mean, they're pretty similar, but I gotta give it to ThreeZero. Like the cleaning up of the thighs and stuff, the smart little engineering they did there. I mean, I just feel like it would be unfair to not acknowledge the impact that that has on the aesthetics. So, let's take a look. The Bandai takes the chest and torso area. They tie at the pelvis in the frontal view, and ThreeZero takes the head, arms, legs, and rear view, giving the point ultimately to ThreeZero, and I think that's fair. I'm tying them in paint because they're both fully painted and decoed and look beautiful for it. We have a ball peg that gets you down, up, then the head has a hinge inside at the neck to get you further up. You get a swivel joint that gets you all the way around, and you get a little bit of side to side. On this one, it's also a ball peg. The head also has an additional hinge that gets you up and down, and the swivel, and the side to side. So tied game. Up past 90 degrees to the side, 360 around, bicep and forearm swivel. Not that you need the forearm swivel if the wrist swivels. And then you have an elbow joint that once extended, oh, I gotta go the other way, sorry. Once extended will get you 90 degrees. Wrist swivel, you can extend the head and get you a bit of up and down as well. 90 degrees out to the side, ratcheted both ways, 360 around. You have a bicep swivel. You can extend this joint here. And did I do the same thing again? I surely did. And that gets you 90 degrees, so it ties there. You can extend the wrist here. You get a wrist swivel, hinge up, down. So it takes the arms at the shoulder, but because it has slightly more range up, but everything is tied. Limited waist swivel. You do get a decent crunch over and even a little bit back. Limited waist swivel. You do get a decent crunch over. Nothing really back though. Swivel down hip joints. That gets you the leg up past 90 degrees. And then out to the side on a universal. Ratcheted joint forward for shy of 90 degrees and outward as well. Little bit shy in range as well. Thigh swivel, thigh swivel. Single knee bend that gets you 90 degrees. Single knee bend that gets you less than 90 degrees. Ankle tilt up, down. There's actually two joints that do it. And the rocker is just done on the toe, but it does actually swivel a bit as well. Ankle tilt up, down. It does it at the joint here as well. No and you do a little bit of a rocker plus, so it's the same exact engineering pretty much. So a lot of similar engineering. The range of motion is slightly bigger in the neck for the Bandai, just like it's slightly bigger in the shoulder for ThreeZero, and then ThreeZero takes the hips, torso because it has a little bit of rear articulation as well, and knees just due to range of motion. But it's in the minutia. Transformation wise, the transformation is ultimately smoother with the Bandai. The panels and such, this is where ThreeZero begins to sort of lose track of who they are. Their lack of experience shows a bit with trying to do more intricate things, and as a result, it's a little bit clunky, it's a little bit clumsy. More impressive for sure, but not nearly as professional, whereas the Bandai feels more professional. You get into cat mode, I think that they tie in their general aesthetics. We had really that chrome versus silver paint. That's going to come down to preference. They all incorporate the accessories the same way, right? It's really like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So I'm going to tie them out for cat mode. Scale isn't really relevant for this conversation. However, if we were to take a look at it, the Bandai is slightly bigger, if that means anything to you in terms of value. But it's a category I'm going to tie out for comparison purposes. Price-wise, the Solo Chogokin was about $50 more expensive. I think it was $350 when I bought it. It's $355 now, which isn't bad considering inflation and all. But yeah, the Solo Chogokin is more expensive. Accuracy, I'm tying them out, and I'll tell you why. The ThreeZero gets the proportions of the head more in line and right, and the Bandai gets the proportions, the overall proportions. And that's that. All right, which one do you think looks better?
This one.
That one on the left?
Yeah.
Okay. Which one do you think looks better?
They actually look really similar.
They do look very similar.
I think probably this one then.
All right, which one do you think looks better?
I think that one looks better.
This one over here?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we doing the C and feel?
No, just C on these.
I would say that one.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. So they tie at gimmicks because neither of them have anything significant. They tie at paint because they're both fully painted and look beautiful for it. They tie to scale because scale doesn't really matter for these. And they tie in alt modes because the cats look great on both sets. Bandai takes accessories just because it has more. I know I said I gave it the build to ThreeZero earlier, but I forgot about the tail issue, so I have to give the build to Bandai. Bandai doesn't have something kind of inherently built in that's causing breakage, and it's causing breakage on a lot of pieces, and it's actually up for debate as to whether or not it's even broken or just like mismanufactured, like a manufacturing issue. There's been a lot of people with the same issue across the board. I still reset my counter, but it may be outside of my hands, so to speak. And because of that, I'm giving it to Bandai. I hadn't thought about that when I initially talked about it. Materials go to Bandai because it has the extra die-cast pieces that give it a heft that the other one just doesn't have. Hardware goes to Bandai because it uses a ton of ratchets that the other one doesn't and would benefit from with some of their tolerance issues. Articulation goes to ThreeZero, as does Sculpt. And Bandai also takes the transformation just because of its smoothness. But to be fair, it doesn't have to do as much, so it's a valid point. ThreeZero takes the articulation, it's just better. And Sculpt, which surprised me a bit, but I get it. It took the presence due to my family. It takes price because it is what it is. And then accuracy, I'm tying them out as well, which leads to a final score of 5-4 Bandai. Now, if you wanted to tie them out at build, which I do think is fair, but that tail is an issue, that would tie them out 4-4, which I wouldn't argue with, but this is just how I have to score it due to my interactions with it. That being said, you don't lose with either of these. They're both pretty great. So that's that, and I think that is pretty fair. But what I'd like to do here is break down further what some of these categories could mean. So we'll go ahead and knock that out real quick. So for best display piece, those categories are based on build, sculpt, paint, and presence. So SOC takes the build, ThreeZero takes the sculpt, they tie at paint, ThreeZero wins at presence, making him the best display piece. For best transformer, this isn't a transformer, but if you were to view it as such, because it does have a transformation, it comes down to build, materials, and transformation. And the SOC, the Bandai, takes all three of those, making it the best quote-unquote transformer. And then for most playable, it comes down to build, materials, articulation, transformation, and accessories. Bandai takes the build and materials, ThreeZero takes the articulation, Bandai takes the transformation and accessories, making it the most playable. And I think it's fair, and the head on the Bandai one drives me nuts, so to speak, but I'm not going to switch out. It's not that big of a deal for me. I have a little small kind of humble Voltron display of the SoC with the 5 lions from the original ones in front of it, and that's good enough for me. I don't need anything more. So, but I don't think you're wrong going either way here. I think that there's things about the ThreeZero that certainly do a lot better. I think the sculpt is just better overall. Also, because the joints aren't toleranced quite right, it can be a bit sturdier at times. So there's plenty to love about both of these pieces, despite where I'm going to sit my money. And honestly, had they come out in reversed order, I'd be sitting here saying the same thing about the ThreeZero. So I hope that helps. Come on over to Patreon and check out some of the sit-down Saturdays over there if you get a chance. Good stuff. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.